With the global population expected to reach 9.6 billion in the next 35 years, the role of sustainable livestock production should continue to increase. The USA is the world's largest beef producer. Meat consumption around the world from 2012 is shown, where the USA produced on average 11.4 million tonnes of beef, followed by Brazil, Europe, China, Argentina, and then Australia. The North American cow-calf industry has been characterised by smaller farms and ranches in the eastern and southern areas, while large ranches are abundant in western states. Explore Beef, funded by Beef Checkoff, are inclined to uplift the image of the beef industry and suppose that America's farmers and ranchers strive to provide safe, high-quality beef for consumers at an affordable price, all while sustaining and improving resources under their care. With the pressures of an increase in demand, the modern grain finishing methods and more traditional grass finishing methods of farming beef are at war. Beef production in America will be analysed through the impact on place, people and profit, and compared with beef production in Australia. Initially, the newspaper article by Geoffrey Mohan made out beef as the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases and therefore the biggest livestock production contributor to climate change, giving the idea that beef is just not a sustainable livestock system. He has used his credentials to manipulate the reader into thinking that we need to cut out beef from our diet as the only way to reduce climate change. Whilst he is an expert in the field, newspapers often carry a biased view and are usually not a highly credible source. Globally, the World Resources Institute deemed beef as the least efficient source and highest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in 2013. The vertical axis shows the kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of protein, and the horizontal axis lists the different livestock production methods, beef being the largest emitter. What is not taken into clear consideration is that the consumption of beef is much larger than that of pork or poultry. Without considering the ratio of consumption, this graph misjudges that beef production is the problem, when really the consumption is. Environmental concerns involved with beef production include the use of fossil fuels, fresh water consumption, land occupation, greenhouse gas emissions, and poor land management. On-farm productivity plays a key role in sustainability, giving the thought that the faster a cow can grow, the lesser amount of resources it uses, and therefore the smaller impact it has. Grain-fed systems use 30% fewer animals to produce a set quantity of beef, and these animals are able to reach harvest weight quicker. The often idyllic image of grass-fed was challenged in the Journal of Animal Science, which demonstrated that energy use in grass-fed exceeded that in grain-fed. Similarly, methane emissions were greater in grass-fed than in grain-fed. The nutritional content of grass-fed and grain-fed beef was analysed in the peer-reviewed, therefore reliable Nutrition Journal. It showed that grass-fed had a lower lipid profile compared to grain-fed, which is an important consideration in consumer choice. Favouring grass-fed in this instance also aligns with the study from the credible journal article by Weidman, which exposed that the majority of grass-fed beef utilised more non-arable land which other livestock systems were unable to use. Either way, it is important to note that for most part, the cattle spend their lives on pasture and are only transported to feedlots for finishing. As well as domestic supply, US beef exports were valued at $7.14 billion in 2014 and have been increasing steadily in the past 10 years. Livestock and beef production are a livelihood for ranchers who are now feeling the pressures of the industry and as a result are adopting ways to sell to make it, which even they say themselves is not sustainable. In Australia, systems are predominantly pasture-based, and although beef production is much smaller, we are in fact one of the largest exporters of beef, with 67% of our beef being exported in 2013. Mohan's article gives a sense of doom to the American beef industry, but upon further consideration of more reliable peer-reviewed sources, it was found that emissions from beef production in the USA have actually reduced by 16% over the past 30 years. Backing this, a report details the fact that over a similar 30-year period, the amount of CO2 was decreased by 14% in the Australian beef industry. hence totally rebutting the statement made in the article which labels developed countries like these as originators of bad habits, and therefore giving potential to the idea of beef production as a sustainable practice.